Hello, everyone. I'm Janna Vint, and I am an alarm management consultant for ProcessVue. And in today's webinar, I'm going to tell you the story of why I chose ProcessVue. As someone deeply involved in alarm management at both the corporate and site levels, I experienced a lot of frustrations with alarm management, ones I'm sure many of you can relate to. Ironically, I never envisioned working for an alarm management company, but the opportunity with ProcessVue was too closely aligned with my experiences to ignore. So what ultimately convinced me? I'll give you a hint. It was the product, the people, and the potential. I appreciate that some of you may be new here and may not be familiar with our company. So I'll introduce our company and some of the products that we offer. ProcessVue is made up of a team of alarm management experts, some of us having over 30 years of experience. Much like myself, many of us come from alarm management backgrounds, and our goal is to provide key personnel with clear, relevant, and prioritized alarm and event information. We strive to help companies improve their operations, compliance, and business optimization by offering consultancy services and a comprehensive software suite. Our software suite is made up of 3 products. The first is Sequence, which is an alarm and event aggregator. It collects alarms and events from multiple disparate systems. It normalizes those alarms using our powerful parsing engine, and then it consolidates those alarms and events into a database. Sequence is typically layered underneath our second software, which is Analyzer. An Analyzer takes the alarms and the events that were collected, and it generates reports to help you analyze your alarm system health and benchmark your performance against industry standards such as ISA 18.2. Our final product is Guardian, and that is a management of change tool with the goal of streamlining, standardizing, and simplifying alarm rationalization using a master alarm database and a project-based approach, all while maintaining a full audit trail. So now that you know a little bit about our company, I will share a brief overview of my career history and really how I ended up here. My background is electrical and computer engineering, and I started my career with ExxonMobil in 2018 as a systems and automation engineering intern. My summer project was my first introduction to alarm management. I was tasked with creating a tool that automated the extraction of alarm management KPI data across all of the sites, and then to move that data across to our business network and create web-based reports to help upper-level management compare site performance globally. About a year later, upon graduation, I accepted a full-time position as a lead systems and automation engineer for alarm management, so the subject matter expert at the corporate level. This just meant for the next 2.5 years, I would test new alarm management products. I would write scripts to standardize the installation process and enhance the vendor software. And then finally, I led the rollout of the new alarm management applications at all of our sites, which was about 50 globally. In addition to that, I provided as-needed support to each of those sites, so whenever there were any alarm issues that came up, they could call me rather than going to the vendor, and I would help resolve those issues. Due to the nature of this role, I was pretty far removed from sites and operations. I think I had spent maybe a total of 3 weeks out of the 2.5 years at a site or in a control room, and so my operational alarm management data or knowledge didn't really exist in a real world context. But I think that role is where I learned the technical knowledge and the foundational knowledge of alarm management. It was a lot like learning physics in school. You know how everything moves and operates on a frictionless surface, and you feel really good about that knowledge, really confident, until you realize that the entire world is not made of ice, and it is much harder to apply that knowledge in the real world. So in 2021, I took a position as a process control systems engineer at a site, and boy, did I experience friction. But that helped close some of the gaps, and it grew my breadth of knowledge. So I became one of the engineers that I had previously supported, which meant my scope of responsibilities was much larger. I managed and maintained the process control systems for an entire plant, which included several different types of DCS, advanced applications, including alarm management, virtual and physical servers, network devices, domain security, you get the point. It was a sharp contrast from my previous role because I learned a little about a lot of things, just enough to be dangerous. Jokes aside, this is where I experienced alarm management and operational pains in the real world. And a lot of those experiences are what inspired this webinar. I have been in the control room when an operator has been overwhelmed by an alarm flood. I have dealt with desensitized operators. I have walked in on weekly alarm meetings, sat through several shift handovers, and personally, I raced against a 3-hour shutdown window to pull and replace over 120 DCS electronic cards because the technology was really old. And so when we were investigating a process upset, we could not find any definitive alarms or events that could pinpoint the root cause of our issues. So a system overhaul was kind of like our Hail Mary, and thankfully it worked. But as you can imagine at this point, my relationship with alarm management was pretty tumultuous. So about a year ago, when my family decided to relocate and therefore I was searching for new jobs, I didn't expect an alarm management company to be on my radar. But never say never, because in July of 2024, I took the alarm management consultant position at ProcessVue. And so now I do a bit of engineering support and implementation, and I offer consultancy services, which include benchmark assessments, alarm philosophies, and alarm rationalization. During my interview with ProcessVue, I kept reflecting back to my experiences and thinking, this report would have helped in this situation, or this feature would have been a game changer, or I wish we had had that level of vendor support. And I think in that moment, I realized that many of my frustrations with alarm management could have been mitigated or resolved. And I think ProcessVue inspired a new hope in me. And so for this webinar, I'm going to share my journey from skepticism to conviction. And my hope is that you'll be able to relate to some of my experiences. That brings me to my first frustration, snapback solutions. And yes, I'm talking about the style of hat. I feel like so many times alarm management companies advertise their solutions as this one-size-fits-all approach, guaranteed to fit your needs with full flexibility and customization. But in reality, that flexibility only exists within certain limitations. For example, they say, yes, of course, our software can meet your needs. Oh, you use this type of DCS? Sorry, we're only compatible with these other 2 types of DCS. Or, yes, we offer custom reports, but what they really mean is they have 10 predefined metrics that already exist in their standard reports, but you can drag and drop those into a custom template. And if you really want to get crazy with the customization, you can change the color. And I remember that used to frustrate me so much, especially when sites would call me and say, Janna, can you help me do this? Or can you help me create this custom report? I can't figure out why it's not working. And I would have to explain to them that, yes, it's advertised as being flexible and customizable, but it doesn't really work that way. And so then I would find myself creating these workarounds and custom solutions, all to generate value that the product couldn't provide. And so, as comical as it is, I do think the story that I'm trying to tell you here is a lot like a snapback hat. Just because the enclosure snaps and the hat fits around your head, it doesn't mean that the hat is right for you or that it fits correctly. Depending on just how large or how small your head is, the hat can look extremely disproportionate and even just silly. And if you don't feel confident, you don't feel comfortable in it, it's not right for you, then you're never going to wear it. It's just going to sit in the top of your closet. And isn't that the perfect analogy for alarm management solutions? Just because the solution technically works for you and it provides a basic need, or it fits a basic need, it doesn't mean that it's right for you or that it performs the way that you would expect or hope. And if you're not getting that expected value out of it, then you're less inclined to use it. It's just going to be like the hat sitting in the top of your closet. So then what's really even the point of having it? During my interview with ProcessVue, they were explaining the products and the capability, and specifically in the context of Analyzer, they mentioned flexibility. I think in that moment, I probably looked at them with my eyebrows raised out of skepticism. But when they told me just how many input sources that the Analyzer software could connect to and pull data from, I was immediately sold. Spoiler alert, it was definitely more than 2 different types of DCS. But I don't think I fully appreciated the extent of the flexibility until I started working there and talking with customers, trying to understand their needs and then implement solutions to fit those needs. My favorite feature that I've used is the custom dashboards, and I think that it's because that's the feature that has burned me so much in the past. But when I say custom dashboards at ProcessVue, I mean custom dashboards. They integrate seamlessly with SQL, so you can query data from SQL and put it into the custom dashboard within Analyzer, and then use our calculation tools to create advanced calculations to make your own KPIs. And then you can take that KPI data or those metrics that you've calculated and the data that you've pulled from SQL, and you can display that in a number of different ways, different charts, graphs, tables, gauges, anything you can really think of. The opportunities are endless. The flexibility also extends to our parsing engine. At ProcessVue, we recognize that industries and businesses have different needs. So if there is a field in your alarm or event string that you think is relevant to your industry or your business, and you think that it could add extra context to your alarms, then we can definitely put that in the database and parse that information for you. And lastly, we can even customize the way you organize and view your data, and not just by plant area. You can organize the data you can organize it by plant area, but you could also combine different plant areas, organize it by alarm type. You can even search for a string within a tag description. There is a lot of flexibility with the software. And if you're still skeptical, trust me, I get it, I really do. But take it from someone who has been on both sides. I have worked for ProcessVue, implementing solutions for customers with a software that supports that flexibility. And I've also been on the other side where I'm the customer, and I have been in the trenches of Windows File Explorer, trying to manipulate or find any XML file that I could modify to make that software do something that I needed it to do, and something that it probably was never intended to do. So trust me, I have been there. And that brings me to my second frustration. Proper priorities are not a priority. It's a bit of a tongue twister, but I'm trying to keep you guys engaged. This one stemmed from my transition from my corporate role to my site role. As I had mentioned, I was pretty far removed from operations and site. And so naturally, the only thing I knew was alarm management. That's what I was the SME for. And so I thought it was the most important thing. I mean, I had read the case studies, I knew about the explosions. And so how could I not think that just 2.5 years into my career, I was the most valuable employee at that company doing the most important job? I'm kidding, kind of, but I was very passionate about alarm management. So I'm sure you can imagine, when I got to a site, I was extremely shocked and a little disappointed when it seemed that no one cared about alarm management as much as I did. I mean, did they not read the case studies? But eventually I realized that it's not that they didn't care or that proper alarm priorities weren't a priority. It was the nature of the environment. With constant shift changes, competing priorities, firefighting, it's an extremely fast-paced and dynamic environment, which doesn't always mesh well with a slower, never-ending process like alarm management. And so oftentimes I would see context being dropped, and during shift handovers, I would see operators trying to communicate that, and despite the fact that there was a formalized process for doing the shift handover, there was no formal way to document aspects of alarm management. And so the information was lost in translation. It was like playing a game of telephone. I also spent time trying to convince an alarm steward that he needed to delete an alarm on some process control equipment because the equipment was literally not in use anymore. But the alarm was still triggering. And even though everyone agreed that the alarm should be deleted, nobody wanted to commit to making that change because they didn't want to be the single name associated with that decision. And so I think a lot of times, without a highly motivated team and a comprehensive solution that streamlines, standardizes, simplifies alarm management so that you have a clear and well-defined strategy amongst your team, or a dedicated alarm management resource at your site whose sole focus is maintaining the alarm system, then I think it can feel like you're always starting over, or that you're never making progress, or even worse, that your alarm issues are compounding faster than you can resolve them. So how do you stay on track? I think, as I mentioned, one of the key components is a comprehensive solution that helps you define a clear alarm strategy. And I think that the ProcessVue suite accomplishes that. Initially, in my interviews, I was drawn to Guardian because I thought it was a very unique product. I instantly recognized that it was designed to complement Analyzer, and that it was designed to make the rationalization process easier and more efficient. And I think I noticed that because it's not something that I had seen before. I hadn't seen any products like it on the market, and I saw a lot of value in that. The other aspect of progress is a dedicated alarm management resource at your site focused on alarm management. And while that's not really that feasible, I do think that our support and our consultancy services could make for a good substitute. We will meet you wherever you're at on your alarm management journey and provide as much or as little help as you need to help you jumpstart that progress and stay on track. I was drawn to the specialized nature of ProcessVue because it's not something I had experienced. I felt like so many times we would purchase software, install it and implement it, and then never hear from the vendor again. And ProcessVue just doesn't operate that way. And it's something that I recognize, and that it's an aspect of the company that I truly value. Our team genuinely wants you to succeed in alarm management. And so now for my third and final frustration, alarm management, easy on the management. I say that ironically, but so often it felt so true, especially early on in my career. I would be looking at these alarm management reports, and on one hand, I would see, okay, we have all of these alarm issues. And on the other hand, I know that I have a master alarm database with a GUI where I can make changes to those alarms. But I didn't necessarily understand how to get from point A to point B. And that was extremely overwhelming and frustrating to me. And I think without that expertise and experience, that bridge can be the most challenging part of alarm management. But even after I did gain that corporate expertise, I found myself at site in similar situations. I was sitting in supervisor's office, and he's asking me the same question: how do I get from point A to point B? So I would leverage the technical knowledge that I had gained and start pulling different logs within the applications. I would pull queries that I had written to add more context, custom reports that had been implemented, all of this other stuff to provide the context and help give information on these alarms. And he's frantically jotting down notes and trying to keep track of it all so that he can share it in the next alarm meeting. Well, then it's the nature of the environment. We get pulled away to do some firefighting, and when he revisits it a couple weeks later, he's looking at this jumbled mess of notes, and a million things have happened since then, so he feels like he has to start over because there was no formal process or standard way to document any of his progress. And I think in these situations, I would find myself getting extremely frustrated because I didn't understand why the management part of alarm management was so challenging. Because what is the point of alarm management without management? And so I think many times software solutions miss the point, the entire goal of alarm management. They provide little guidance on how to rationalize your alarms and reduce your alarm volume because they're focused on creating those reports that help you identify your problems, because that's what sells. You don't need a solution until you first recognize that you have a problem. And if they could make your problem look pretty on a graph, then even better, hook, line, and sinker. But that's just not the point. And as I mentioned in my last frustration, I was drawn to the Guardian product because I thought it did help bridge that gap and facilitate that rationalization process. And it worked well with the rest of the suite. So in the ProcessVue suite, you have Analyzer, which does the performance analysis, much like many other alarm management solutions. It uses reports and points out your problem areas, but then it takes it a step further by benchmarking your performance against industry standards, such as ISA 18.2. So are my KPIs on target or not? And then that helps you focus your efforts and maximize your improvement. Both Analyzer and Guardian foster this collaborative workspace. So say you're looking at your reports in Analyzer and you realize one alarm has been on your bad actors list for several months, so you need to take a look at it. You can put that alarm into a work list, add all the context and information you need. If you get pulled away for some reason, then that's okay. You or someone on your team can come back. All that information is still there. They can record any observations they've made, any other information, continuously update the comments, the status, until you're ready to close out that alarm. And if you decide that you need to rationalize it, it's a similar story with Guardian. You can add that alarm to a project where team members are already signed to make changes, reviews and approvals. And so it removes the responsibility from a single individual and kind of places it on the team. I think another key component of Guardian is its management of change capability. So it tracks changes, any reviews and approvals, and it attaches a name with them. And so you're not going to find yourself in a situation where nobody wants to delete the alarm because they don't want to be the single name associated with that. There's a name attached to every action, a full audit trail, and it establishes this layer of accountability that is crucial in the progression of alarm management. So overall, both products support this environment of continuous improvement. You can stop, start, work at your own pace, and utilize the software every step of the way. It's going to support you throughout the entire alarm management lifecycle. And if you're not familiar with the alarm management lifecycle, it is defined by ISA 18.2 as this continual process that starts with a philosophy. The philosophy is usually written and agreed upon by your company or your team, and it's really the foundation for the whole process. Then you move into the identification step where you identify different conditions that you want to alarm on. You rationalize those alarms, justify them, make sure that they are aligned with your philosophy, and then you move into the design phase where you're creating those set points, deadbands, delays, any logic associated with the alarms. And then finally, you implement them into your control systems. Then that moves you into the next sort of sub-cycle where your operators are managing and responding to those alarms, and you're more focused on alarm system maintenance, which you are accomplishing through continuous monitoring and assessment. So when you do finally recognize something that needs to be addressed or an alarm that needs to be changed, that's what pulls you back into that management of change cycle and then restarts the whole process. And so as I've kind of been discussing, I think so many companies focus their efforts on that reporting and the monitoring and assessment. So if you feel like you're struggling to manage your alarms and you feel like this is your solution, then it makes sense. I mean, they're leaving out a huge portion of the alarm management lifecycle. I said ProcessVue is a comprehensive suite. I think Analyzer does a good job of addressing the monitoring and assessment, similar to the other products. But then you have Guardian, which is meant to complement Analyzer, and it is designed to support that identification, rationalization, design, implementation, and really fill those gaps. So ProcessVue is going to cover you throughout the alarm management lifecycle. So now that you've sat here and listened to me vent about my frustrations with alarm management, I hope that you've realized that alarm management doesn't have to be frustrating. I mean, I'm sure it still will be, but if you find yourself thinking it's for any of the reasons that I've described, then maybe it's time to explore a new solution. So how did I get here? Well, I recognized that ProcessVue is a tailored solution to fit your specific needs. It's a tool and a team that helps you stay on track, and it's a software suite that guides you throughout the alarm management lifecycle. I chose ProcessVue because it's a specialized company with products that I believe in, made up of people who are passionate, and I think it has the potential to transform alarm management. Now, this is normally where I would take questions and wrap up this presentation, but for the sake of time, I'm going to skip over that, and here's why. I think any good story should address the key elements that you introduce in your introduction and your conclusion. So I have highlighted the product, I've highlighted the people, but I haven't shared a lot of detail about the potential. And to be fair, that was a pretty critical aspect in my decision. I wanted to work for a company that was continuously trying to improve and enhance their product, keeping up with emerging technologies, and striving to create a better and more valuable experience for the user. So when I realized that ProcessVue did align with those goals and those values, I was excited. But I've been even more excited to see the innovative ideas that we discussed in early conversations actually play out and come to life in my time working here. And so I think it's only fair that I introduce you to ProcessVue Alarm Intelligence, which is what's on the radar for ProcessVue. And it reaffirms our commitment to enhancing the alarm management lifecycle in every aspect. ProcessVue Alarm Intelligence is a large language model that enables the users to interact with the entire ProcessVue suite using natural and normal language. It's going to unify our products so that you can achieve faster decision-making, adaptive analysis, smarter and more efficient investigations, and it's going to empower all users to make a change in alarm management without needing that expertise or that experience. It's going to allow you to unlock the full potential of your alarm data. And you don't have to just take my word for it. I will actually show you. Okay, so this is the interface. You can see that it's a chatbot type interface. So I'm first going to ask it, what are my top 10 alarms for April? You can interact with it just like you would ChatGPT, but the extra value here, or the value that's specific to alarm management, is that it is layered on top of our software. So it's connected to our databases in the background. So while you can talk to it and ask it any sort of questions, it also has that alarm data that it can reference and refer to pull information and do all of its analysis. So it's querying the database right now to figure out what my top 10 alarms are for April. And as you can see, it comes back with a response, a list of my tags and the counts, and then it tells me how it got there, and then asks if I want to, it proposes other things that I can ask. And because I am utilizing this on a laptop, I anticipated that it might be a little slow. So I did prepare some chats that I think show off the capability of this new feature. So for the sake of time, I am going to refer to those, but I wanted to show you how you could interact with it and how it would respond and operate. So in this chat, I piggybacked off of my initial prompt, which was, what are my top 10 alarms for April? I asked, what are my top 10 chattering alarms for April? And it comes back with a list of my chattering alarms, and it tells me the chattering count. So I noticed that my top chattering alarm has a count of 17, and it's A38. That's the tag. So again, it tells me how it arrived at that. But say I am looking to reduce our overall alarm count, and I think chattering alarm would be an easy win. So I ask, what kind of on delay do you suggest to remove those alarms, and tell me the percentage of reduction that I'm going to see. So then it starts looking at the different durations, the number of occurrences, how many of those occurrences are chattering, total alarm count, and it comes back and it recommends a timer of 20 seconds. And then it tells me this would eliminate 9 of the 17 chattering occurrences and reduce my overall alarm count from 54 to 45 on this tag. And then it tells me that's a 16.67% reduction in total alarms. But if I'm not comfortable with a 20-second delay, it also provides alternative timer settings, 5, 10, and 15 seconds, and then the rate of reduction that you would see with each of those. And so say I decide, that's great, I do want to implement that 20-second timer, but I'm getting pulled away to go do something out in the field, then I can quickly tell it, okay, create a work list item in Analyzer for this tag, give it this comment, and assign it to Janna. And then it's going to show me that it starts querying the work list within the database. It assigns it an ID of 2014, and then it summarizes all of the words that it used and what it's done in Analyzer to create this work list item. So let's check out if it did it or not. Okay, so this is our nuisance alarm work list, and as you can see, we have an item. It is work list number 2014, and it is for tag A38. The cause is chattering alarms are detected. The assigned task is to implement a 20-second on delay timer to eliminate chattering alarms. It's assigned to Janna, and the additional comment is that the analysis shows that 16.67% of alarms are chattering with intervals between 2 to 20 seconds. So you can see it captures all of that, the important information that we discussed in that chat. And then I can come back and review it later, or someone on my team can. So that example was actually inspired by something that I was actually asked to do, which was to create a tool that basically did the same thing. It would pull the data, understand the durations, and then plot different delays and the percentage of reduction on a graph for each tag, and so, or for each alarm. And I'm sure you can imagine that took several days of engineering time, and I just accomplished it in a matter of minutes using this alarm intelligence. So another cool experiment that I did with it was trying to understand the predictive analysis capabilities. So again, what are my top 10 alarms for April? But this time I want to include it in there, include the plant area. So I see my top 10 alarms, and as I'm scrolling through the data, I notice that PA3 is typically or is most commonly associated with those top 10 alarms. And so I also realized, okay, well, maybe PA3, that plant area, has experienced a lot of trips recently. So I ask it, are there any alarm patterns that suggest we are heading towards a trip in this plant area? It tells me I just asked it a great question, but it can't find any data. It keeps trying, it modifies its query, and it updates me that it's still trying, communicates very well. And then all of a sudden, it gets really excited and says, okay, now I can see the alarm data. And it lets me know that it realized that some of the plant areas were stored with a leading space while others were not. But it was smart enough to pick up on that and to realize that it's the same thing. So it continues with the analysis, and it provides the data in the table form, but then it normalizes that data and communicates it in normal language. So it picks up on different patterns within the chattering alarms, high frequency alarms, the alarm priority, recent activity, just some basic pattern analysis. And then, but because I want to make sure that it's taking into account that historical context, because I think that will make for better prediction, I ask it, do any of these alarms historically precede trips, just to make sure. And so it continues to do a deeper dive into the analysis. It gives me some more specific alarms that are key trip precursors, and then different observations and the risk assessment. And then at the end, it says, would you like me to analyze any specific alarm patterns in more detail or provide recommendations for monitoring these precursor alarms? Well, I decide, okay, maybe, but I still want to see it in more of a timeline view. I'm a visual person. I'm not fully convinced that it is truly related to incidences in the past. So here it is. It pulls the data. It starts associating dates and times with it. And then it plots that on a scatter plot for me with the minutes leading up to the trip, and then the alarm count per tag in those minutes. And if I don't like the way that data is displayed, it does it again for me in more of a bar graph kind of format. And then it recaps the pattern analysis that it's just done with reliable precursors, timing patterns, early warning indicators, all of these different types of triggers. And then it says, would you like recommendations for implementing an early warning system? So if I'm not already impressed by the pattern analysis that it's done, let's see how well it does when I ask it to recommend an early warning system. So I follow through and I ask that, pulling data, and then it comes up with this early warning system that is made of 3 tiers: a trigger or a watch tier, a warning tier, and a critical tier. And then it gives me the trigger conditions for each of those tiers, and then responses that it suggests when those triggers occur. And then it gives me different ideas for how to implement this early warning system, and then a risk assessment. So then, because I like numbers and I want to know the value that I could add, I ask it, if this warning system was in place, if I did do this, what percentage of my previous trips could I have avoided? And it comes back, it does an analysis on the previous trips, and it tells me right there in bold that implementing the proposed early warning system could prevent approximately 52.1% of trips. And then it highlights the different tiers and the reduction of those trips by tier. And if that is not impressive, I don't know what is. I just avoided or potentially reduced the trips by 52%. So now I realize I'm a really great employee. I reduced that amount of trips in just a few minutes. And so I need to tell my boss all of the great things that I've done, but that is a lot of information to digest and to summarize. So I tell it, write me an email to my boss summarizing this info, focusing mostly on the implementation. So it writes this long, detailed email that is full of great information. But let's be real, my boss isn't going to read all of that. So I ask it, can you make it even shorter? And it comes back with even the subject line, but a quick summary, the system, different benefits. There it is, right on top, 52% reduction, and then next steps. And then you can see it even has the signature right there, regards with your name. So you can literally copy and paste this into Outlook and send it to your boss. And so I think that there is a lot of potential in this feature and that it could transform alarm management. And if alarm intelligence is something that piques your interest, I would encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn to stay up to date with any information or release dates regarding the alarm intelligence. And if you're interested in any of our products, you can find more information about them at our website, ProcessVue.com. If you're interested in reviewing the content of this webinar, that will also be posted online. And finally, if you do have any questions, you can email us at questions@processvue.com, and we will look to respond to those in the next few days. Thanks for attending this webinar. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.